So good morning. Welcome to the June 24th meeting of the Indicio Identity Community Meetup. So we do have a great conversation lined up for today. It's sort of centered around this problem that is getting a lot harder to ignore. The idea of how does AI know who or what it's talking to, right? With AI systems now being able to answer questions, guide decisions, handle transactions, make all kinds of decisions for us. The idea of trusted identity is more important than ever. So at the same time, we have really powerful tools. We have verifiable credentials. We have authenticated biometrics that make it possible to secure identity in ways that are both more private, more scalable, more usable. And so today, joining us, we have Ken Ebert and Mike Ebert from Indicio, who are working on building some really cool tech that does exactly that. And we're also lucky to be joined by Ajay Amlani, who's CEO of a company called Aware, who brings deep experience from both public and private sectors when it comes to identity verification and biometrics. So I want them to introduce themselves a little bit so we can hear a little bit more about who they are, and then we'll jump into it. But Ajay, we'll start with you. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. AJ Amlani. I'm actually born and raised in Michigan. Started working in the field of identity in 2003, actually, with the launch of the Department of Homeland Security. I was one of the co-founding members of the team at the Department of Homeland Security, and one of the specific problem areas that we wanted to try to work on and solve was identity for obvious reasons. And so we pursued a few different capabilities. I helped to write parts of the Real ID Act, launched an initiative called HSBD 12, which has led to a lot of the employee ID cards and the security around that whole enrollment flow for government employees and contractors to have a standard identity. And then after that, went on to launch Clear, the airport security fast line, as a co-founder. And so that was an amazing opportunity to be able to introduce biometrics to the general public, as opposed to just it being a security tool, and it became also use of convenience. And the blend of convenience and security together really created an opportunity for me to think about the long-term vision of where identity can go, and how it can be liberating for consumers, and at the same time allow them to have more effective and easier transactions with higher security and privacy.
Excellent. Well, we'll go to Ken. Ken, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am Ken Ebert, CTO at Indicio. I've been involved in identity, specifically the verifiable credentials aspect of it, for about the last 8 years. Prior to that, I worked in medical analytics and had to deal with the master patient problem, which is identity for patient records and how patients are treated, caregivers as well. But the idea of matching correctly different identities from different systems was always a problem, because if you mix up medical records, you can kill somebody. And so, or at the least, give them improper treatment. And so the idea of tying identities together to real people is a very important part and aspect of our lives that affects the outcomes of our personal health, but also our daily interactions. As fraud and other problems increase, identity is an important aspect of preventing fraud and allowing us to have a smoother, more secure, more privacy-preserving interaction with the systems that we deal with. And that's why I feel that this topic is very important.
Absolutely. And Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
No
I
audio.
cannot hear Mike. I cannot hear Mike. Let's see here. He is off mute though, so
How about now?
there we go.
Zoom is playing naughty tricks with my microphone settings, so sorry about that. I'm Mike Ebert. I'm the Director of Software Engineering at Indicio. I work with the teams of engineers on a day-to-day basis to set priorities, figure out what tasks we're going to do, coordinate between various parts of the engineering teams. And so it's I get to deal with the boots on the ground problems of working with identity and the issues that come from people trying to fake systems out or trying to help people, make it usable for people, make it easy and straightforward as well. So it's a real honor to chat about how to make this work for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, let's kind of dig in then. So we're starting with this kind of big problem that we're all here to kind of talk about today is kind of what happens when AI systems can't tell who they're talking to, right? So we have systems that are interacting with users, they're answering questions and giving access and making decisions. And they need to know who they're talking to. Like it's a major vulnerability, right? We have AIs that can be fooled. They have bot attacks with fake requests, deep fakes that can spoof voices, phishing attempts. They've all kinds of things that make it harder. Well, actually, quicker and more convincing, thanks to generative tools to fool these systems. So, call centers and virtual assistants and all kinds of things. I'm wondering, maybe we start with you, AJ. When you look at the problems facing from that AI not knowing who it's talking to, what do
Yeah.
you see as the kind of the biggest kind of problem that's facing from that side of the equation?
Yeah, sure. I'd say that there's a few problems, but also quite a few opportunities, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think we definitely want to keep the opportunities in mind, which is if you're given the opportunity for me, there's certain things that I love doing. I've got 3 kids. I love spending time with them, right? I don't want AI to do that for me. I love coaching them. I love teaching them math. There's certain things that I really love doing. There's a lot of things I don't love doing, like expense reports. I really don't enjoy booking travel, like for work, booking flights, booking hotels, trying to find the best deals, all of that. So if there are things that in your life you love doing, and if you can maximize the amount of time that you have doing that, why wouldn't you do that? And that's where, with regards to on a personal basis, the idea of agentic AI is highly relevant and highly personal for me. When you get into the corporate world, you have companies talking to companies. Well, who are companies at the end of the day? What are companies going to look like at the end of the day when you have AI-driven companies making decisions on behalf of companies? At the end of the day, what happens is you get into this world where it gets pretty confusing because you're going to have not just transactions that are being carried out, but negotiations and conversations that are being carried out. And you really have no idea of whether or not it's actually based upon a baseline of humanness. And when you get back to the baseline of humanness, right, a company at least has one person, let's say, that owns the company. Hopefully, like I think we'll still have a world where at least one person is at a company. I wouldn't be surprised if you have a 4 or 5 person, multi-billion-dollar company in the future with the way that AI is progressing. But at the end of the day, you do have some person who's accountable for agreeing to a particular plan or a contract or something like that. And so tying it back to an individual identity is really important in making sure that you also have proof of humanness associated with that. That's one thing that specifically Sam Altman, in the recent launch of his company Tools for Humanity, has made sure to really verify and make sure that the message gets across of the idea of a human-based internet and humanness in the age of AI is a really important concept that we need to be able to convey. But how does that get across? How do we now maximize and improve the ability for agentic AI to be able to not just purchase my flights, but research my flights, know my interests? My AI is going to talk not just to Delta Airlines, but it's going to talk to Delta Airlines AI. So my AI needs to know that they're talking to Delta Airlines AI, and that if they're negotiating a price on a flight, how much information can I find out about Delta Airlines flight? Like, is it empty? Is it full? Maybe I can strike a deal. Maybe they know my calendar, which means they might know that I have a must get to meeting by a certain amount of time, which means they can probably price it higher. Do we want to have preferred pricing? What are the laws and the regulations really going to allow for? There's a lot of components that really stretch the line between technology implementations, governance, and regulations that are in place, um, and specific desires and like an interest and personalization. And that
AJ,
ties
do
identity all
you
the way
think it's
through.
important that an AI know that it's talking to another AI and not an agentic AI that's representing me and not talking to me directly? Is that an important aspect of this?
I think it's a critically important aspect of it, right? Which is when it establishes the relationship with an agentic AI, it needs to know what are the um, rules of the road, right? It needs to know what is this agent responsible for? What is it commissioned for? Like, I might commission it to be able to buy a hotel or rent or like put a reservation in for my Hyatt, as long as the price is between 150 and 250, right? Maybe not less than 150. I'd love it for it to be as low as possible because I want to save money for my company, but definitely not above 250, let's say, right? And so what are the different, are they commissioned? Are they able to be able to book the room, or do they have my credit card authority, right? Do they have my name? Do they have my address? Do they have all the information that is regulation necessary to be able to book a hotel room at the end of the day? Because when I show up at the hotel, I'm gonna have to present my ID, and that's gonna have to match whatever's on the record. Um, so there's these physical and digital manifestations of AI that kind of blend between what is a human and who is a human that you're talking to, and whether or not the agent itself has actually been given the rights and responsibilities by a human, and what rights and responsibilities.
Mhm. So whether they've been delegated proper authority to act on my behalf, and it's not like you're using my agent to book a flight for you instead of
Yeah,
me using my agent to book a flight for me. If that delegation of authority, I think, is an important aspect of what is the agent authorized to do on my behalf, and how close to impersonating me can the agent come? Does it have to state that it's acting on my behalf, or can it just kind of go about its business pretending to be actually me, and the other agent that it's speaking with may or may not know that it's an AI agent and an agentic AI talking to a booking service, for instance.
that's right. That's right. And even today, right, there are certain elements of this, even on a digital world, where when I'm making a transaction happen, uh, there's trust enablement of that transaction coming
Mm.
from the website that I'm on, talking to another digital tool, right? So these digital interactions are already happening, but the ability for it to be able to make specific interpretations based upon my own interests and the scalability of it, right? Which could be shocking to a lot of people. I mean, I could have 30 agents working on my behalf for a variety of different things at any given point in time, all times of the day, even while I'm sleeping, right? So I could wake up and just check to see, okay, well, what was done while I was sleeping? Because, my 30 agents were still operating. And so this this type of a handshake, but this type of a handshake with specific points of information, but not too much information, is a really important component. So,
That
um,
gets into the privacy aspect, right? Where
that's
um,
right.
I may want to only have my agent or me. It could be me interacting with an agent, or it could be my agent interacting with another agent. But determining how much information should be revealed for a particular situation, what's appropriate to reveal, and what's appropriate to retain as not pertinent to the transaction. So avoid leaking my data beyond uh, the minimum necessary to complete a transaction.
Yeah, that's right. And I'd say privacy fundamentals, right, are sort of based on, I think of it as two principles. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Ken, and others on the call. I think of it as two principles, which is minimizing the amount of data that you need to share for any one given transaction, and then the protection of that data that you provide over to whatever agency or whatever entity that is requesting it. And And then probably maybe there's a third with regards to the deletion of that data, um, so that what are the policies in place with regards to holding onto that data afterwards. And so those become very important in a world where the other AI is always kind of trying to learn too. So if I'm negotiating with Delta, I don't necessarily want them to know a lot of information about my calendar or my schedule or what time my meeting is, because they might use that against me to try to basically, increase the price. This is all about, differential pricing and making sure airlines and travel is just notorious for having very different prices based upon whether or not you're, you know, a leisure traveler or a business traveler. Now, they can't change prices on a person by person basis. That's actually illegal, literally, to do. But you can see this happening in a retail world where maybe it's not changing prices, but maybe it's increasing discounts. Maybe you give certain discounts to certain people and smaller discounts to other people. And this is something, when one of my companies that I launched was called U Technology. It was a digital coupon company. It was literally like you don't see click coupons in your mailbox anymore that you need to cut out and take into a store today because of this company U Technology that I launched, which allowed you to load coupons to your frequent shopper card at grocery stores. And what we did is we really looked at the past 2 to 3 years of purchase history on shoppers and targeted relevant offers to them based upon what kind of behavior we wanted to try to drive for the individual. And we could deliver that via email, we could deliver that via mobile, we could deliver that via like text or inside of an app. And you can personalize these offers based upon the kind of behavior that we want to drive. If you know that a person has kids, babies, and they use Huggies diapers, well, guess what? Like Pampers made by Procter and Gamble would love to be able to target that household and get them to try Pampers. If you're one grocery chain that's competing against Kroger, or let's say competing against Costco, every time that you step into a Costco, you always want to only spend $60. You walk out spending $180 always. You just took away a lot of sales from your local grocery store every single time that you step into a Costco. And so for a grocery store to offer $1.50 off of diapers or $1.50 off of something else that you're going into Costco for is so worthwhile because they get that $180 back into their store. And so that kind of data and relevancy on an individual ties into what kind of information they know about me. Some of which I actually want them to know because sometimes it's a give-get situation. The more information you give, the more benefits you get.
You've
But then
touched on
sometimes
an
you don't want it.
interesting topic of agents, and I think the definition of an agent is important for the audience to understand that an agent has fiduciary responsibility to its owner, its controller. That's part of the privacy and verifiable credentials. Agents act on your behalf. They can act on behalf of a business or organization or a thing. So the fact that an agent exists and its duty is to to act in your best interests, then you have the competing agents that are bound to act in the best interests of a company or organization that you might be interacting with, and that agentic quality of a AI gives it the responsibility to act in your best interest. And part of your best interest, as you just discussed, is privacy preservation, or how our data is treated. And so whether it's a human interacting directly with a AI, a human interacting with an AI using a verifiable credential and an agent that represents and holds the verifiable credential, or whether it's the AIs interacting both on behalf of their representing person or organization, but that duty to act in the best interest sometimes it competes my agent with the agent acting for a business, and that balancing act that you talked about of how much information should be revealed and what benefits accrue back for revealing that data. But it should be clear to the persons that are authorizing the sharing of their information, whether it's directly or by typing it in or sharing a verifiable credential, for instance, to give more authentic data or data that's been verified, or their agent acting on their behalf, that idea of the control of how much is shared, how much is withheld, and that becomes an important part or basis of the interactions.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, remember, like back in business, a lot of the same business school concepts apply. Like back in my negotiations class, with regards to, what's my bat now? What's my best alternative to a negotiated agreement? What are all these different places and things that you need to keep in mind when agents are negotiating on your behalf, right? The principles are still there, but the scale and the quickness and the speed is amazing. But you also have to make sure that you don't have adversarial AI happening, right? And you don't have, let's say, competitors of Delta who are trying to basically pretend like they're me, um, trying to understand what Delta's prices are, uh, and potentially even trying to take down Delta systems. Um, you might have bad actors, you have international bad actors, you've got cyber attacks happening, a lot of this discussion around like what's happening in Israel and Iran right now. I used to serve in the military, or not serve in the military. I used to work in the Department of Defense, specifically, and focused on a lot of the um, cyber attacks that were occurring, and studying a lot of the advanced persistent threat bad actors and nation state actors, and defending our critical infrastructure against them in the world of AI. And they're arming themselves right now, right? They're investing in the infrastructure that's necessary to be able to carry out these attacks. And you think about what's happening with Israel and Iran right now, and the fact that you don't need nuclear facilities anymore, right? Like, yes, we went over there and we bombed a bunch of nuclear facilities, but Iran has a huge cadre of phenomenal cyber attackers, inside their organization, and they could potentially do some serious damage to our infrastructure. So, in the world that we're talking about agentic AI, we like to think about all of the good things and all of the benefits and the productivity gains that we'll get as a society. But people forget to think about the bad actors that are out there, and the availability of sophisticated tools, the democratization of these tools to now be in the hands of even the less sophisticated bad actors can now have access to really high-end tools. And it becomes uh, really important to establish this kind of identity infrastructure in the world of agentic AI that allows you to be able to conduct these transactions in a safe manner while withholding and minimizing the amount of data that you're sharing and the protection of that data. But at the same time, how do you prove that you're actually the right person, or a person in general, in a more convenient way?
This might be a good time, Mike, to go over some of the basics of verifiable credentials and how they work, and how then we can apply those to the conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've talked about some of the problems and opportunities, and so let's talk a minute about what kind of tools or solutions are available today, and maybe which ones are still needed or need to be more widespread. So we've got some basic slides about verifiable credentials and working with AI. Maybe we should, Helen, if you got that deck ready, let's just talk through these real quickly. Just to give, some of us have a lot of background and spend every day talking about this. Let's share with the audience some of the fundamentals of what we're talking about here. So if we, we'll start here. So with an introduction to verifiable credentials. So if you have some important data that comes from a trusted source. Let's say that you get your passport, your driver's license, your birth certificate, you sign up for an account somewhere. At that time, you can establish who you are, and then through some of the magic of modern cryptography, the party that has that data and that other people trust, like the government or the company that owns the account, they can attest to that information by issuing, basically a packet of encrypted data that's and using the keys that they have, they can sign that data and others can verify that. You can hand that to a holder or a wallet that a person or an entity controls, and then they can take that encrypted packet of data and they can take it to a verifier or a relying party and construct a presentation, a proof of the data that they hold and its authenticity and origin. And so that's kind of how verifiable credentials work. And then, Ajay, you've got a lot of specialty in biometrics, which would be how do we establish personhood? And then, so that's kind of the basics of establishing identities and how that data is shared. And when you throw AI into the picture, then you start to have an interaction that looks kind of like this, where the user is kind of this middle column and the AI is kind of over on this right column. So the user has a wallet, and then they have a chat box that's open with an AI that they're interacting with, or they have an AI that represents them that's interacting in this manner. And then you have the AI that they need to engage with, such as the airline or the hotel or your grocery store. And so the AIs are interacting with prompts and responses, or the users interacting with prompts and responses. And with those verifiable credentials that both parties can hold, this one shows a particular flow where the user or the user's AI will share data to enable the transaction. And so the verifier, the software that the artificial intelligence has, can request presentations, or the user can offer presentations of their credentials and say, here is the data that I'm willing to share for this context. And then the AI could take that and do something interesting with it. This is the user authenticating to the AI. There's one more slide I want to peek at. And this is the AI presenting data to the user. So the AI has a wallet that it controls, a cryptographic place to store those packets of data. It's interacting over the chat window with prompts and responses. And the user, either directly or represented by an AI, also has verifier software that can ascertain the validity of those credentials. So those are, the interaction can go both ways. Both parties can hold credentials that attest to certain facts, whether that's certain authority or intrinsic data or information about the AI or the individual. So Ajay, let's talk a little bit about how these solutions and others that you're aware of, how these apply to the flow. What do you think? What are some of the first steps to making AI safe to interact with and understandable for everybody? You're on mute.
Thank you. Sure, absolutely. I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, I think first off, there's agents acting on behalf of humans, there's agents acting on behalf of companies. But really, what are companies at the end of the day? Well, they're made up of individuals, right? Humans that are actually representing the interests of companies. And they're binded to the company. They've got fiduciary duty to the company to represent it. And therefore, a lot of people confuse, like, let's say KYC, which is know your customer, and then KYB, which is know your business. At the end of the day, how do you know a business? How do you bind a business to a decision? Well, it's a human that actually makes the decision. It's a human that is able to conduct that signature. And so linking the two is really important, and understanding at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're proving not just that you're talking to a human, you also need to link to who that human is, because at the end of the day, you need to understand what rights that human has. Like, if that human is actually acting on behalf of a company, are you speaking to somebody that has the authority to sign an NDA even? Do they have the authority to bind the company to a contract? Do they have the authority to be able to execute a vendor agreement? So you need to know who that person is. You need to make sure that they are a human in the first place. And in the age of AI, that's actually really hard to do. Because what occurs now is the ability to be able to create deepfakes that are incredibly realistic, live, in that you can actually now deepfake myself. Like, I might look like this, right? And I might look a completely different way. I could fake myself real time and mimic somebody else's voice. I'm not sure if anyone on this call has actually watched the 60 Minutes episode on fraud that was just about 3 weeks ago. But there was a session and a portion of that episode where they asked a company called ID.me about a specific episode that occurred that ID.me shared video footage of, where there was a Chinese national who was interpreting and making themselves look like an Eastern European person in the United States to try to apply for some kind of a government benefit program, whether it's a tax filing or whether it's a VA benefit or something else. And they were deepfaking themselves real time. They were deepfaking their video, the way that they looked, their mouth was moving when they spoke, their voice was basically interpreted already real time. So these real time abilities to be able to impersonate yourself, even on a video call, make it very easy to be able to trick any type of a system. And so what you need to do is you need to deploy some of the more sophisticated tools that can allow you to assess humanness. And you need to think about things in terms of multiple layers of signals that you can gain from both the device that you're interacting with, the location of the device, the phone number, let's say if it's a phone. But you also need to then be able to leverage the different tools that are on a device, such as the camera, that can be able to assess whether or not it's a real 3D live human being with live human skin in front of the camera, or whether or not it's actually a deep fake video created real time and injected into the video feed. So these are the different types of ways that people are finding bad actors are trying to trick systems and interpret and basically pretend to be somebody else that they're not. Now, the training data available to do this is actually readily available, right? There is nothing secret about my face. I literally walk around everywhere I go with my face in front of me. It's very different than a user ID, password, phone number, social security number, mother's maiden name, home address. Like, I don't walk around with that data on my face right in front of me. I don't post that on my LinkedIn page, right, with my face. Like, there's nothing secret about my face. The only thing that you need to do is be able to. So when people think about, oh my God, I'm sharing a face, what are you talking about? Like, it's everywhere already. But what you're doing is you're using the key of something called liveness. Liveness associated with the biometric is in fact the key that unlocks the ability to recognize that that is actually you. You are in fact present in front of the camera at that moment in time, and you are not, being deepfaked. That technology is something that is AI driven, that is consistently using and getting better and getting trained. And it's very important to use a sophisticated liveness tool when you're thinking about using biometrics to try to bind a verifiable credential to act on behalf of a human in the first place. And so, like as an example, my company Aware, we just came out to be the top vendor in a 10+ vendor analysis run by the Department of Homeland Security. It's called the Riveted Analysis, RVITD. And you could take a look at it. It's got great research, and they actually hired thousands of people to come inside a government facility to test out these different types of systems. And they used millions of images, some of which were deepfaked and some of which weren't, to try to test these different types of systems to see who came out to be the best. Aware was one of them, and there's other ones as well. But there are ones that are not very good, and you need to make sure that you're selecting ones that are very good, that have been independently tested by experts in the industry. But you also need to understand it's never a stagnant tool. It's going to continue to need to be modernized and upgraded because the bad actors are constantly trying to find ways around these systems, especially when they protect some of the more critical capabilities like filing taxes online, right? And so that biometric matching capability and verifying the face is in fact matching. The match itself is important, but what's equally important is verifying that it's a live human in front of the camera. In a lot of ways, it's actually more important that it's a live human because of the scalability of AI-enabled threats.
Right. There are various moments when, we talked about how AIs can act on the behalf of an individual or on the behalf of a company. and how that
Yep.
ultimately the AI is acting for those people. Those people, especially in the case of a company, should, you talked about how they should have permissions or authority to do certain things. And so at certain moments, it's probably okay for the AI to just run around with a batch of data. Sometimes an AI can run around with verifiable credentials to present authentic data, but there are certain moments where you need the human to say, I am a real live human and I authorize this.
That's exactly right. And I authorize what, which is
Yeah.
important too,
Yeah.
right? Because then the verifiable credential would the power of it is its ability to be able to hold information, hold only portions of information, and then only share small amounts of that information, whatever's necessary to be able to conduct a transaction. So as an example, if you are leveraging a tool to be able to find the best deals on alcohol for a party you're throwing, right? You'll need to verify that you're 21 and over. You don't need to verify your birthday. You don't need to verify your name. You don't need to verify your home address. You don't need to verify your eye color and hair color and height and all the other information that's actually on a driver's license. All you need to verify is that you're 21 and over.
I think that's an important distinction. Verifiable credentials nomenclature describes that as a selective disclosure. So even though the data might be in your driver's license credential, you're only going to reveal a certain subset of that data. So I'm going to reveal my my name, perhaps. Another aspect is called predicate proof. A predicate proof is a proof where you reveal that my age is over 21 without giving my birth date. And so those are two mechanisms for privacy preservation. Even though the data is in the credential, it's shared in a way that only reveals the attributes or the characteristics of an attribute without giving away any extra data minimization in the presentation. So I think that's a great point that you make, Ajay, about how that information is shared so that it protects the privacy of the individual while still meeting the requirement that the retailer might have to prove that they interacted with a person who is meeting the age requirement or any other requirements that they might have so that they're compliant with the laws.
Yep. And the other real big important element of a verifiable credential within that whole flow is the certifiable signatures that can come along with it, right? Not just the signature, let's say, from the human originally, but the fact that the human themselves could be like the verifiable credential could be a subset verifiable credential of an original verifiable credential, which could have been a government issued ID that carries with it a signature from a government agency stating that you are in fact who you say you are, or you are in fact the information in this verifiable credential is in fact true. Like I am actually 21 and over, and the government has certified that I am 21 and over. That allows for the liability passing, right? So that whoever's selling me the alcohol or selling me the age restricted content or whatever the case may be, if I'm trying to access an online social media tool and I need to verify that I'm 12 and over, right?
You're
Whatever,
renting a car and you need to be 25, to be
right.
a safe driver. There are lots of cases. Yeah.
Yeah, but we call it the relying party, which is primarily like the person selling who's relying on the information to be able to conduct a transaction. You have an issuer, and then you have a bunch of other issuers in between. And you could have a world of verifiable credentials, but at least you have and carry forward the signature of that issuing authority along to the relying party who needs to receive that information to allow that transaction to occur. And that allows for the liability. Like I could attest just on my own and just say, yeah, no, it's equally scary to think about it, right? Which is a person of my age pretending like I'm 12 to 15. Like there's a problem with that, right? And and as much of a concern of something like that as you have of a person who's 12 to 15 pretending like they're 20, 21, 25. And so you need to be able to leverage these different types of tools like verifiable credentials to verify and gain the information that you need and minimize the amount of information that you take in to be able to allow that transaction to occur.
Another aspect of this is the idea of how that data is more reliable and error-free. In addition, so as a convenience to the user. So, like for instance, you're purchasing or trying to change a ticket, and the AI is requesting that you enter your multi-digit PNR number or something stupid like that, and a human has to type in the passport number or a boarding pass number or something silly like that. They're error prone, and so if the data can be more reliable by passing it as a verifiable credential, that also improves both the user experience and the outcome, because instead of putting in the wrong digits and having an error in the input process, they're able to more conveniently share either all or part of their verifiable credential that has the information in a form that is trustworthy and reliable and seeds that interaction with an AI to allow for a smoother user experience, but also the higher quality data seeds the conversation and allows them to more quickly get to the outcome they want, a rebooked flight or something like that.
And there's one more point too here with the acceptance from a relying party standpoint of a verifiable credential, which is something important to take into consideration is when verifiable credentials are passed, and they are passed, right, with signatures, etc. In a physical world where you're passing an ID over to somebody and they're verifying the ID has the information necessary, let's say that I'm 21 and over. Are they only looking at the ID? No, they're looking at me. Why are they looking at me? They want to verify that my face matches the face that's actually on the ID document. And so most people think of biometrics associated primarily and only with the initial issuance of a verifiable credential. There's an important component, especially for high-value relying party transactions, let's say boarding an aircraft, that you still leverage a biometric check at the time that the verifiable credential is being accepted. And while a lot of people might think that that introduces friction into a transaction, we're all doing this now 30 times a day, right? Like literally Face IDing to unlock your phone. The last year for biometrics has been a 180-degree shift from a consumer perception standpoint of how much friction is associated with the biometric and how concerned people are with biometrics being used for surveillance. People are getting very, very comfortable with the idea of using their face to be able to identify themselves. And why shouldn't they? Because we are trained as humans from the time that we're 2 months to 3 months old to recognize faces. It's an innate, natural thing. It's not something creepy. Only because it's been utilized in certain surveillance, law enforcement activities where people have been tracked, has there become an association of biometrics with creepiness. But that creepiness factor now is associated with you having to hand over all this private information about yourself. Why can't I just use my face? It's interesting to me, the first person that I enrolled in Clear, it was at Orlando Airport, and it was a business traveler that was just trying to get from Orlando to Atlanta for a day trip. Literally, all they had was a backpack. And they walked up to me. They asked me what this lane was. I told them it's a fast lane to be able to get through airport security. They're like, so you're telling me that I can get in front of that kid trying to stick his Mickey Mouse stuffy inside the, scanner? I'm like, yes, that's basically what you can do. They're like, sign me up. Do I need to pee in a cup? I was like, no. All you need to do is basically, enroll and look in the camera. He's like, seriously? I was like, yeah. And he looks in the camera and he's like, that was really easy. I was like, have a safe trip. And that freedom, that liberation of being able to actually just use your face to be able to identify yourself and prove that you are who you say you are is a phenomenal partner in the world of verifiable credentials because they both go hand in hand in a lot of ways.
The idea of biometrics to make that user experience much more palatable is really an important aspect of making life more pleasant. But new regulations, and particularly in Europe and other places where they're prohibiting companies from keeping biometric data in a centralized database, verifiable credentials adds a new aspect to make that more feasible and manageable by incorporating the biometric along with your identity data into the verifiable credential. It allows for presentation of the credential, extraction of the biometrics, and then a match against my face at the point of service if that's required. Some places allow for temporary storage in a centralized database for gallery for travelers and things like that, but no permanent storage. But if the permanent storage becomes in my verifiable credential, I can present that either ahead of travel or ahead of a financial transaction, and then use the face for the moment in time recognition of that to allow for that binding of the biometric to the person, which you described as enabling the fast lane to occur. And the fast lane is what we want. The fast and secure lane is what it really is. And that's the binding of those two aspects, I think, makes that possible.
And the liveness element, which is really important, right? Which is, we forget that there absolutely is nothing secret about a photo of me, right? It is out there already. Like this video, this webinar gives people enough content on its own to deepfake me on any video going forward, right? Just the fact that I'm supporting this, just the fact that I'm on right now.
Yep.
This clarity of the camera is enough to be able to allow people to have deepfakes of me everywhere, anytime they want. But am I live? That's where the reflection of light from the screen back against my face and the 3D geometry of my face back into the camera and the signals that you can pick up through that and the unique movements of every eye twitch and hair follicle and sweat gland on my face, you assess whether or not I'm actually a live human. Does the light reflect off of my eyes? What about my eyebrows? Like all of that is really important. And that's all AI driven and it's all instantaneous today. But what I'm so surprised by is the fact that a lot of people looking at deploying biometrics don't think about liveness and sophisticated liveness, not just ones that like check the boxes, but sophisticated liveness associated with it.
I
So,
want to.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Adam.
Mike, did you have a follow-up thought on that?
I was kind of going to summarize some points, but so go ahead.
No, I was just going to open it up for other thoughts from if anybody else in the audience had questions or other thoughts as the conversation goes. So feel free to jump in, and if there's anybody else who wants to loop in any other ideas, feel free.
I was just going to say it's an exciting time where we have all these new opportunities. We've got a toolkit now, right, of various options of things that you are, things that you know, things that you have, and then ways to verify the authenticity or integrity of those things, and methods to detect whether you are authorized or delegated to share that information. And AI is going to reconfigure our lives. Verifiable credentials allow us to improve things. Biometrics are more sophisticated than ever, and finding the right combinations of those and when to use them, and for the proper balance between security and privacy and convenience is going to be really interesting. And we get to experiment with it and see how work hard at trying things out, finding what works and what doesn't work, and improving things. And so it's going to be an exciting time.
Absolutely. I know some of the solutions that have been really interesting in terms of for our customers in terms of adoption have been what we call ProvenAuth, as well as ProvenAI. But ProvenAuth in that you can now take that credential with your biometrics and log in to websites. And what that means when we start talking about the use of keys and usernames and passwords and thumbprints and all the other things, and get an email and get a code and a one-time code and have your backup codes, and it's like when we start looking at all of the kind of walls that have been built up thicker and thicker over the years, and the friction that has added to our experience of trying to interact with our customers, trying to interact with one another. I don't know if Mike or Ken, you have any thoughts about how proven auth and this sort of idea of kind of bring your own biometrics has really opened up a new a lot of new kind of opportunities, new doors for the world of login.
Ajay talked about how speed is just becoming a thing now, right? Where some of these verifications, some of the deep fakes, some of the authorizations and verifications, they happen in real time or near real time. And so with login, you can utilize, the same level of security or higher than there was before, but now you don't have to worry. Sometimes you don't have to worry quite so much about having multiple devices or modes of interaction or whatever. You can simplify without losing the security or the privacy or the convenience. But the speed is increasing, and that's really important where you have the number of verifications you're going to have to do to prove that you're human or that you're authorized. That will have to increase because the speed of AI and those parties, the bad actors, et cetera, that you can, instead of being limited by the number of humans on Earth, you can spin up agents as far as you have compute. There could be, for every human, there could be tens, hundreds, thousands, millions eventually of AI agents. And so the speed has to increase, and you have to learn to cope with it. But credentials and biometrics can make login experiences, AI interactions, high value transactions, contracts, et cetera, all work better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Any other questions or any other thoughts from the audience? I know that there's folks that have joined that are very well informed and involved in experience in the AI world. Richard, you can off mute. Do you have any kind of thoughts to response to any of the parts of the conversation today?
Well, I don't even know who I am, so much less can I present an identification that describes me. But sometimes, how do we accommodate that inherent natural component of our humanity of invoking different personas as we are different people to different audiences, right? So is that a unique ID that says this is Richard, or this is Richard in this skin and this particular manifestation? And that's one thought. The other thought is once I give my ID, and this is the model where everything is getting more and more predictive, does that also imply how will I decide and act? And it's not just by giving my ID, is that whole attribute set that comes alongside with the identification that might be even preclusive, as AJ was saying, Delta raising the price of my seats, et cetera, because they know how am I gonna act, what kind of decisions I will take. And as you can see with AI, they're getting better and better at anticipating that. So then the ID becomes a little bit more complex. It's not just the ID, which is a very simpleton, a born name, etc. But it's more like, okay, what does he do? How is he acting today? Is he under this skin or that skin? And I was wondering, how that philosophical component can be embedded into what you guys are doing.
That's a great question. I thought a lot about this because actually, I advised and worked with PayPal and DocuSign and a number of other organizations as well. People have multiple PayPal accounts, right? Legitimately. Like you'll have one for yourself, you'll have one for your business, you'll have one for your nonprofit, let's say that you volunteer for, one for the Boy Scout troop or the Cub Scout troop that you're trying to raise money for. So a lot of this like sort of additional personas is completely legitimate. It's fine. You're supposed to have different elements of yourself, right? Everyone's got different elements of who they are, and should manifest itself. But tying it back to an individual human at certain times is really critical in a digital age. And knowing who's behind it and allowing organizations to make decisions based upon that is really critical too. So if you're allowing someone to take out a home mortgage, you might want to know if that person has another home mortgage, regardless of if it's their vacation home, regardless of, it comes down to their ability to pay that mortgage, right? And that's one source of person that it stems from. And so tying it back to an individual while still allowing for them to have multiple personas, as you put it, is actually still an ability that needs to get enabled and needs to be understood as part of the verifiable credential infrastructure that's put in place. It's a great point.
As you tie it back to like the simple case of travel, you might have a profile or a persona that says, I am who I am, that's my base credential. And I'm going to put a usage profile credential out that says, this is business travel, this is for a vacation. And so I might get different responses. I might be much more flexible in my travel plans for a vacation than I am for my business travel. And I might want the agent to know that this is a flexible arrangement. This is a vacation that I'm trying to plan. But those types of things can be embodied in your suite of credentials that you offer that says, here are some characteristics I want to share about myself. And in this particular instance, that might be I'm volunteering or I'm on vacation rather than a business use case. So it allows for that to be embodied and securely transmitted and appropriately selectively disclosed to an agent or to the software that I might be interacting with.
So you could essentially present yourself in different lights, according to whatever your personas or your skins are. So then you would be customizing your verifiable credential.
Yeah.
Right. So you would have, you say, hey, today I feel like being, Superman, well, whatever. And or for this app, I would like to be Superman, and so on. So then when we create, then it's not really an identity. Then all of a sudden, it gets into the complexity. Who am I really talking to right now? Am I talking to Superman or am I talking to Richard pretending to be Superman?
The biometrics might take it back to this skin, but my my persona if I'm going to Comic-Con and I want to be Superman, I might really identify, present an identity that shows me as Superman and so forth. But the tying it back to that core identity to be able to know that the person that I'm interacting with is this core person, and he might be acting in this role or this persona in this case, and that allows for that to still occur. But I think the systems are becoming more flexible to adapt to that type of interaction while still maintaining the core identity principle of this is the person, whether I'm acting in the role as business, leisure, Superman. It allows for that flexibility to occur.
So that core, that the likeness is going to go down to blood, probably. It's like instead of
Well, you'll be able to know if the Marvel company issued you your Superman credential, that if Marvel says this person is Superman, then they're probably Superman. But if, Helen issued a credential to Richard that he is Superman, I mean, how much does anybody trust Helen's word for, defining who is Superman? So being able to know who the issuer is of the credential says a lot, about the actual contents of that credential. But we are actually at time. Thank you so much for all your participation. Next month, I'm really excited for our next conversation. We're going to have one of our customers who just announced yesterday that they'll be offering verifiable credential products for the Japanese market. Nippon Rad will be here. They will be talking about authentication and authorization using proven Indicio products and how their customers can benefit from verifiable credentials for login and authentication. So join us next month. You can keep the conversation going on that meetup page. There's a nice chat feature. You can also reach out to us if you want to be connected with any of our speakers or you want any more information. But again, thank you so much, AJ, for joining us. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Richard, and everybody else. This recording will be on YouTube probably within the next few hours. We will send out a note to all those who registered to when it's available. But thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.